Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. So today I have another top 5 video for you guys, and if you guys ever have a top 5 you want me to do, let me know down below. I'm always open to fan suggestions. But for today's video, I was thinking about what to do, and I made a video earlier in the year which was top 5 most broken, overpowered things in the game earlier in the year. And I was thinking, what about the things that used to be overpowered, the things that used to be broken, but aren't really anymore? They've either been patched, other vehicles have been added that have replaced them, or a specific weapon has been added, or maybe something else that has changed it entirely. These things, I'm not saying that they're great either, they can still be annoying at times, but they're nowhere near as much of a problem as they used to be back in the day. But anyways, let's get started with the video. I also want to thank my friend Timmy for helping me to record this video. So starting off at number 5, we have the Rhino Tank. Now, a lot of people are watching this video probably laughing at this, thinking to themselves, you think the Rhino Tank used to be overpowered? Because this thing can get blown up pretty easily today. Yes, this thing was overpowered back in the day. When GTA Online first launched in 2013, this vehicle was overpowered. You unlocked this vehicle at level 70. You could not purchase this vehicle before level 70. And when people got to level 70, they would save up most of their money because back then you didn't really have that many things to buy. They would get their apartments and then they would save up the rest of their money and they would buy some cars and then buy this thing. Most people would get this thing. They would save up for it and they would get it. It's why a lot of GTA veterans, they still have this thing in their inventory. They still have this thing in their Pegasus stock. So how the Rhino works is you spawn it with Pegasus. It spawns at certain locations. You go and pick it up. Now, why isn't the Rhino Tank overpowered anymore today? It's for a number of reasons. Back in the day, this thing took around 5 to 6 RPGs. Now it takes 3 to 4 RPGs and about 3 sticky bombs. So the armor, it's a lot less than what it had in the past. Additionally, the number one reason probably why this thing is not overpowered is also the map blip. Because in the past, whenever somebody was in the Rhino Tank, you did not know that they were in the Rhino Tank. They would just appear as a white dot on your map, just like everybody else. People didn't know that they were in the Rhino Tank. And then you would go up to them, and they would try to blow you up, or they would drive towards you. You wouldn't think anything of it. You would just see a white dot, and then they're in the Rhino Tank. And then you barely have any time to react. We didn't have other weaponized vehicles to really spawn back then. I mean, somebody could have gotten a laser from Fort Zancudo and possibly blown it up, but we did not have that many ways to blow it up. We only had some RPGs, some sticky bombs, and possibly another Rhino or a laser. But the Rhino Tank is not just obsolete because of those reasons. Today, we have so many weaponized vehicles in GTA Online. I did not think that there would be this many vehicles added to GTA Online when I first started playing this game back in 2013. And these vehicles, the Rhino Tank, it stands no chance against them. Like, take a look at this with the Oppressor Mark II. I don't normally use the Oppressor Mark II, but just testing it against the Rhino Tank, I told my friend to try to kill me. He could not kill me. I easily blew him up. He had no chance. So the Rhino Tank has no chance against a lot of other vehicles. I mean, somebody could just spawn a fighter jet and just dive bomb it and just blow it up. Even the Kanjali, a better version of the Rhino, or it's a different tank, but I call it a better version of the Rhino because it's pretty much in the same category. But anyways, even the Kanjali, that thing still stands no chance against the Oppressor Mark II because all somebody needs to do is they need to fly at a certain angle where the tank can't hit them. They just lock onto them. The missiles are pretty accurate and it blows up the tanks no problem. So the Rhino used to be a problem back in the day. Not really anymore. A lot of people have forgotten that it used to be a problem. Next at number 4, we have passive popping, and passive popping is the one that was most recently fixed on this list. It was actually fixed with the casino update. Now, what is passive popping? Passive popping is basically when somebody would go into passive mode and they would just follow somebody around the map, and they would get out of passive mode at the last second, and they would go after that person, getting a jump on them, and oftentimes they were in a weaponized vehicle. They were in a Oppressor Mark II, they were in a Hydra, etc. And the victim, whoever would get passive popped, they would barely have enough time to react. They wouldn't know when that person would get out of passive mode, and that person that's in passive mode was able to get really close to people, and this irritated people for many years. For many years, this was a problem in GTA Online. Ever since passive mode was added, this has been a problem, and finally with the casino update, Rockstar has changed it. Now you can see this was from over a year ago where I was just testing passive mode with my friends. This is what passive mode used to be like. It got really annoying, and people who like aviation, people who like planes in this game, they were annoyed the most by passive popping because passive popping would ruin any kind of fair dogfight, because all somebody would need to do is they would get into a fighter jet like a Hydra, just keep blowing people up, keep killing people, and then when somebody else would get another jet and go after them, then that person would just go into passive mode. They would keep flying in circles until they got behind that other person, disable passive mode, and then blow them up. So what has Rockstar done to fix passive mode? Passive popping has been ended because you cannot use passive mode in weaponized vehicles. If you try to use it in most weaponized vehicles, it will not work. The only exception that I know of is the thruster. The thruster jetpack you can use passive mode in, but most other vehicles you can't use it in, and you will actually be kicked out of it. And the transition period from passive mode to out of passive mode has been increased from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. And additionally, whenever somebody is aggressive, they start killing people, they cannot use passive mode for 2 minutes. And then if they kill somebody again, that timer will go back to 2 minutes, and then whenever their passive mode ends, it will go back to a 5-minute cooldown. So passive popping has really been fixed. We don't have to deal with people using this in weaponized vehicles, and back in the day, this used to be a major problem. I mean, just take a look at this. I can just activate passive mode and just have all the missiles fly through me. So passive popping, really big problem back in the day. We should all be grateful that we don't have to ever deal with this again. Moving on, at number 3, we have the Regular Oppressor. Now, you guys remember when this thing came out with gun running back in June of 2017. GTA Online has had a lot of weaponized vehicles added before that, but before gun running, we've never really seen a vehicle like the Oppressor. The closest thing before that was the Ruiner, but we've never seen anything like this thing. This was a motorcycle that had a glider ability. It could fly across the map. Its boost was very effective. You could soar across buildings, you could soar across mountains and hills, you could get to places pretty quickly. It was very effective for transportation. You no longer had to cut through streets, you could just fly over all the buildings. It was very useful, and I still use it to this day. However, though, there was the other aspect of it being used in PvP. Now, the Regular Oppressor was much more balanced than the Oppressor Mark II. For one is that you actually had to unlock the missiles of research. Now, I'm not saying research is good, I don't like research either, but at least you had to unlock the missiles for the Regular Oppressor. It took time to get the missiles. You couldn't just get them right away like with the Oppressor Mark II. You buy the Oppressor Mark II, then you get the Terabyte, then you just upgrade it, and you have the missiles right there in one day. With the Regular Oppressor, you actually had to research all the different items until you finally got the missiles for it. And even when you had the missiles, they were like buzzard missiles. Basically what they were. They were not like Ruiner missiles, or similar to Ruiner missiles like we had with the Oppressor Mark II, but it was still a problem. It was a problem back then because people could just spawn it with the Motorcycle Club menu. They could just spawn it, they would have it right there, and it was such a difficult target to shoot down. It was really hard to shoot down because it was such a small target, really hard to hit it. But it did take a lot more skill to use in the air than the Oppressor Mark II. This thing, to master it fully in the air, it was kind of a bit of luck depending on the angle that you were flying at, but it took just much more skill than the Oppressor Mark II. And if you were on the ground, you didn't really have to worry about it, unlike with the Oppressor Mark II, because people with the Oppressor Mark II, they can bomb people on the ground because they're hovering, versus this thing that is gliding, so you're constantly flying in an up and down formation, depending on the angle that you're at. And you could hit somebody on the ground with this, but it was just much more difficult to do so, and you could easily crash. So it was annoying when it first came out, because that first month, after everybody had pretty much unlocked missiles for this, you saw this thing in so many lobbies, and whenever there was PvP war zones, people would be using this thing constantly. You would see the oppressors, they would be all over the map, people would be constantly fighting with them, killing each other with them. So what stopped the Oppressor from being overpowered? Well, it was two things. You could argue that it was the Oppressor Mark II, because people started using it, but the thing that really stopped the Oppressor from being overpowered was the Deluxo. The Deluxo, which is next on this list, right here. The Deluxo took the spot of the Oppressor by being abused by a lot of people. In between that time, before we still had the Oppressor Mark II, people would occasionally also grief with Oppressors, but a lot of the same people that griefed with regular Oppressors, they actually started using the Deluxo. And the Deluxo had Ruiner missiles, which meant it was very hard to dodge those missiles. You could almost never escape from those missiles. The only time you could escape from them is if you get behind some piece of cover really quickly before the missile actually hits. But as you guys can see, a regular Oppressor stands no chance against the Deluxo. And you can see why people were using the Deluxo. I mean, take a look at this in this contact mission. It's very helpful. The missiles will almost always hit the target. They hit whatever they're aiming at. Even if you hit the missiles at such a curved angle, they will almost always hit whatever they're locking onto. And the thing with the Deluxo was that people that know how to drive this thing, they could dodge missiles pretty easily. You can see here, I'm dodging a lot of homing missiles that my friend is firing at me. But despite that, the Deluxo was a little bit easier to shoot down in the air because it was a larger target than the Oppressor. But I consider this thing still a much bigger threat than the regular Oppressor. And the reason is because of its missiles. Because its missiles, like I said, when you lock onto something and you fire it, it is almost impossible to dodge them. You could outrun them in certain fast aircrafts and you could run behind cover to get away from it, but you could almost never dodge them. You couldn't jump out of the way, they would curve, and they would hit you. And on top of that, there was a speed glitch. There was a speed glitch with this thing where people would take it across the map in a matter of seconds. In seconds, people were across the map. They would fly Deluxos at really, really fast speeds, really insane speeds. Nothing was faster than the glitch Deluxo. And there are two reasons why people stopped using the Deluxo. The first reason is the speed glitch was patched, but that's really the smaller reason. The number one reason that this thing stopped being used by a lot of people is because of the Oppressor Mark II. When the Oppressor Mark II came out, a lot of people that were using the Luxos went on to using the Oppressor Mark II. And the reason is because the Oppressor Mark II is a smaller target, it's faster, it's more agile, it can be spawned right away with the Motorcycle Club menu, it has countermeasures, and it has very similar missiles. This thing, if you go up against an Oppressor Mark II and somebody pops chaff, you can't lock onto them. They fire a missile at you, and you almost never can dodge it, and you're dead. So whenever a Deluxo would go up against an experienced Mark II user, the Mark II user would almost always blow them up. And I'm not saying that's a better change, because now the Oppressor Mark II is the vehicle that most people are abusing, and there's not really any counter to that. So it was the Oppressor Mark II mostly that caused the Deluxo to stop being overpowered. And the number one thing that used to be overpowered in GTA Online, but isn't today, is the Hydra. You guys remember this thing? People would abuse Hydras. They used to be such a problem. They were a problem for years. Now the laser jet, that has been in the game since day one, but the laser jet was never a problem like the Hydra. Despite the laser being more agile in the sky, it still had the same abilities with the explosive cannon. So what made the Hydra so overpowered? It was the fact that you could spawn it with Pegasus. When the heist came out in March of 2015, you could spawn a Hydra right with Pegasus. It would spawn a helipad pretty close to you. With the lasers back before that, at least you had to go to the military base. You had to fight your way through the military because that was before people owned hangars, so you had to get past base security, get into the base, and then steal a laser. That was fine, and that was balanced. What was unbalanced was when they added the Hydra, because then you could just spawn it at any time, go to a helipad, pick it up, and start blowing people up with it. And look, I used the Hydra a lot. It was very helpful in missions, very useful missions. I'm not denying that, but it was a problem back in the day. It was really annoying. Whenever you would go into a 30-player lobby, you would see Hydras everywhere. They were always in war zones. And when I mentioned passive popping earlier in this video, what happened is people would passive pop with the Hydra. It was really bad. And whenever somebody would try to get another Hydra, they would try to shoot them down in the sky with it. People would go into passive mode when that person would get that Hydra, fly around in circles, go behind them, and blow it up. It was so unbalanced, and the only way to really get rid of a Hydra was to use another Hydra. That was really the only way. You could snipe at it, sure, but that wasn't really that effective. You can see this clip. This clip is from about 2 years ago. 2 years ago, this is before gun running, and my friends and me were testing to see how overpowered the Hydra was. And I was a pretty good Hydra pilot. I told all of my friends to try as hard as possible to shoot me down. They were all using heavy snipers, and they couldn't do it. And I just kept blowing them up. So this thing was a major problem back in the day. You would get lucky, and sometimes people would crash, but when they would crash, they would often go off the radar. Then you would have to go near the nearest helipad. You would have to try to figure out where they're going to get that Hydra from and blow it up. So what caused the Hydras to stop being overpowered? What was it? It was actually something a lot of people don't like, but I think it was a great addition. The explosive sniper. The explosive sniper ended Hydra spam, and Hydra griefers, they absolutely hated this thing because they weren't able to grief as easily. This thing actually gave you a chance. It gave you a chance to defend yourself on the ground. When you used the explosive sniper, all it took was one shot and it would disable the Hydra. If you took 2 shots, the Hydra would blow up, and that was it for the Hydra griefer. You didn't have to deal with them anymore, at least until they got another Hydra. But even with that one shot from this thing, and a Hydra would be smoking. It would be disabled. It would be pretty hard for them to get another jet. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Was there anything else that was overpowered back in the day that I missed that's not overpowered anymore? I thought that I would make this video because there's pretty overpowered things in GTA Online today, like the Oppressor Mark II. And maybe looking back on this video, you know, we can try to figure out a way to balance the Oppressor Mark II. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like. If you're new to my channel, enjoy my content, subscribe. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care, everyone.